Jeff started the last question, so Carolyn will be answering this question first. And go ahead. Thanks.
Oh, good evening. Thanks for doing what you're doing for the city and the time that you're committing to this, because it is really a big deal. And since we're talking about oil, let's keep talking about oil. The project that's proposed on our city yard will in fact increase traffic in this town, which will in fact increase noise pollution. The project will also increase light pollution. It's going to increase air pollution, and I don't know what the word for it is, but whatever smell pollution is, the project will increase that as well. So my question to you, if we're going to wait for facts, is do you believe that it's possible to create a 34-well oil and gas drilling operation on our city yard and mitigate the health and safety risks to an acceptable level for our community, for our families, and for your children?
Thanks. And that'll be for Carolyn.
Well, I believe we are talking about risk and reward. That really is the question. So it is a money conversation, right? I mean, that's why we have somebody who knows economics who's going to be going through the contract. Some of the concerns that I have about the contract are the way it's structured. I mean, quite honestly, we don't really know how much money really will come to us. We know that the Tidelands Trust governs a lot of the way the money is spent, but we also know that in Long Beach, they did spend the money east of the mean high tide line. So there are precedents that have been set. Things that I don't know yet that we should find out, it appears that we only own a small percentage of the uplands. So that means that we would get a very small carve-out of that. In the royalty agreement, as it was structured, there is a split between the general fund and the Tidelands Trust, what's governed by the Tidelands Trust. I don't even know really where they came up with that split. That needs to be verified. I don't even know if that's legitimate and legal. So the reality is we don't know at this point what the money is. People deserve to know what the money is because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about risk and reward. All right?
Can you repeat the question?
I will continue. There was a report that came out, and what the report said was that there was $80 million potentially associated with the uplands, maybe $500 million associated with the Tidelands. There's a split between general fund and the Tidelands Trust Fund. So anyway, Mike, to go back to your question, it is risk and reward. And some people have ideas. Maybe some people say, you know what, for $500 million, it's not worth it to me. So fine, that's what everybody can vote on. But people should know. People should know what the dollar amount is, and then they can make their decisions. Personally, you amortize it over 30 years. It doesn't seem like a lot of money to me, given the risk. Personally, I don't think it is. But it's still up to the voters to decide.
Thanks, Carolyn. Haney?
Dr. Collins, if I understand the question correctly, your question is relating to whether or not we believe that 34 wells can be drilled in the city yard within an acceptable risk for us and for our families. Is that the question?
Yes.
And my answer to that is no. I think based on my environmental experience and dealing with these issues, and actually just based on all of us reviewing news about potential problems that happen with similar situations, I frankly don't know if any similar exact identical situation exists of such a drilling in such a compact area, about 1.3 acres, drilling 34 wells in an area that's immediately next to homes and immediately next to a green belt and a park where our kids play. And if the key words of the question are acceptable risks, I don't see the acceptable risk to be a cost-benefit analysis. It's either whether or not the risk is acceptable, and to me and to my kids, the risk of having 30 oil wells and 4 other wells in that area that go underneath the ground into the ocean and then operate for 35 years in our little beach town, to me, that's not an acceptable risk.
Thanks, Haney. Greg?
As Haney mentioned, there are current articles and stories on other communities here in the Southland. And as a Northern California, I always wanted to say that word, Southland. We live in the Southland. If you look locally, you'll see that there are other cities around here that are confronted with this very issue and are experiencing health issues, and in fact, challenging companies and oil fields on the dangers and the illnesses that their children have. I'm sorry, I don't put a dollar amount on our health or our children's health or our neighbor's health, I don't care if it's 500 billion, I don't care if it's a billion. No, it's not good for us. And if the health issues are more important than money. And so that's basically where I come from.
Thanks, Greg. Nanette?
Thank you. I agree that we cannot put the risk of our children's health at risk. I think it's way more than just a dollars issue here. I mean, you don't have to go very far. Go to Children's Hospital, go to the cancer ward, see what it's like when children are really ill. Parents, when their children get ill, how many times do you hear them say, "Oh my goodness, I would do anything if my child could be healthy again"? I'm just not willing to take that risk. That is something that every voter will need to decide. From what I've seen, from what I've read, even down to the Beverly Hills situation, where they had drilling there in their high school. Joy Horowitz writes a book, how she goes back 20, 30 years later for her high school reunion, and people have abnormally high cancer rates and are going to funerals. Is that something we really want? For me, I don't think it's something that could be mitigated.
Thanks, Nanette. John?
Thank you. Doctor, you raised some very interesting questions, they absolutely have to be answered. But they're questions. They're not facts at this point. And I think we need the answers to those very questions. And if people can't provide good answers, then absolutely, we should not have that. But the rest of the community who hasn't made up their mind yet are waiting for answers to those very questions. I want to make sure they get them. There's a lot of things being said that are very scary, and I agree, and obviously deserve serious answers. But we have to wait for the answer, and then we can say, does that make sense? Okay, it does or it doesn't, and I vote accordingly. But I want to make sure that everybody out there gets the answers, not just the accusations. So that's my job, again, is to make sure we get clear, solid, documentable information and answers to all those very valid questions.
Thanks, John. Jeff?
Just dovetailing that, I don't believe it's an accusation. I think it's a matter of fact in terms of what the drill site's going to look like and what they're going to do and the size of their operation and those things. Those are known things. We know those. It's also a difficult thing for us to get in this exercise of evaluating them now while we're in the midst of a process that I think we all should be committed to. And I know a lot of you out there have been participating in that process, and that's important. And they're not just studies, right? It's not just an environmental impact report that's going to be done, but it's also the 2 studies that the city has commissioned. So there's going to be an independent economic evaluation on this project that you'll have as a resource for you. And you're also going to have an independent health evaluation, expert health evaluation on risk factors related to this project that won't even be covered, by the way, in the impact report, that go beyond the scope of that. I think the city, our city and our council and our staff have gone above and beyond on this project to make sure you'll have everything you need to make the decisions you need. I mean, am I concerned? Sure, we all should be concerned. I don't think I don't think that goes beyond the pale for people to express concern, because the other part of this equation, the most important part of this equation, are the questions that you ask, that you care about, that make a difference for you. And
Summarize, Jeff.
I would say the impact report will come back and they'll talk about things related to acceptable risk, but the only measurement for acceptable risk really is the one that you make.
Okay, thanks. And we'll go to audience question 2, and Haney will be taking that first.